Today's podcast is sponsored by MPB, the online pricing engine that provides the right price for any camera or lens. Get free kit pickup and get paid within days, all without leaving your home. How much could you get? Find out with a free instant quote at www.mpb.com/sell.
Hello and welcome to the AV Forums podcast. We're live tonight. If you're joining us on YouTube, it is Monday the 24th of July. And joining me tonight are regulars. We've got Ian, Collen, Ed, Selley, Julian, Scott and Martin Dew. Good evening, guys.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Lots to get through. We haven't been around for a couple of weeks, so we've got lots to talk about tonight. We're going to be talking about mini LED TV reviews and in particular the Hisense U7K, which is sitting behind me there at the moment. It is currently for review, and I'll give you a quick preview of that and some of the mini LED TVs I've been looking at. Martin's going to be looking at a low-profile, space-saving Earthquake Couch Potato. Find out what it is a little bit later on in the podcast. Ed's going to be talking about Bluesound Node X. We've got our usual TV, home cinema and hi-fi news from Ian. And of course, we're going to answer your questions tonight. So if you are joining us live, the chat window is open. So you can join us there, ask your questions. We'll try and answer them this evening. If you're listening a little bit later on to the recorded version, you can still get in touch with us. You can leave your comments in the thread related to this podcast on AV Forums. Just go to AV Forums, go down to the bottom of the forum list. You'll find the podcast forum. Find this episode and leave us your feedback in there or your questions or whatever. We'll get around to answering them at some point. And of course, you can also email us, old-fashioned way, but you can still email us at podcast@avforums.com. And again, we will get round to answering some of your questions as they come through. From the podcast on the 10th of July, in relation to the Perliston R Series home cinema speaker review, which Doug very kindly took us through on that podcast. Unground comments that he found it a very enjoyable podcast. Thanks to all, and in particular Doug's explanation of what makes the Perliston so good and his honest description of the limits of audibility and memory and so on. You very much appreciated his comments there, so thank you very much for your feedback. And from the podcast on the 12th of June, so we're going back something here, from Jeffran171, he asks Martin, who did the repair on your Parasound? So who did the repair on your Parasound, Martin?
Well, I asked the distributor, Connected Distribution in Cheltenham, no less. Mike and Phil there told me to go to a chap called Peter Ellison in Cardiff. And Peter Ellison has his workshop above Audio T, the retail store in Cardiff, but they're not related. So when you take your amplifier in to Peter Ellison, the Audio T guys will show you through to the back of the room because, like I said, they're not related. And even though Peter Ellison, I think, used to be an employee of Audio T. Now, I got my HCA 2003, which is a 3-channel amplifier serviced by Peter just a couple of months ago. Now, the problem was that the output relays had oxidized and were not making a good connection, so he cleaned them up. But he said I would need new output relays. I've now since been in touch with the CEO, David Sheriff at Parasound in San Francisco, and actually we've just been exchanging emails today on this very subject. Parasound no longer has any parts for the HCA series. I should say only limited parts. They've got some power switches and feet, but pretty much nothing else. They sold all their supplies to an AV company, repair company in LA called George Meyer AV. He doesn't have any of the output relays either. Now, I have been told by Audio T in Cardiff, Peter Ellison, he's told me I will need new output relays at some point, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like anybody's ever going to have them or be able to find them. But anyway, notwithstanding, that's a side note. If you need your HCA amp repaired, go to Peter Ellison in Cardiff. But like I said, he might not have the parts that you need. But I suspect, given your problem that you've submitted here, it will be to do with leaky capacitors rather than something mechanical. But I don't know, and you won't know until you speak to Peter.
Yeah, give him a phone call. Don't drive all the way to Cardiff and find out he hasn't got the bits. Give him a phone call. Yeah. Okay.
And he's very good, by the way, very good.
Yeah, excellent. Right, so hopefully that answers your question there. And if you've got questions, get them in. We'll answer them. Anything within reason, we'll answer. Right, so before we get started tonight on the podcast, what have we been up to, Ed?
Sorry, I had been muted there. I have been doing mostly normal things. The only point of mild excitement was this weekend, I introduced my girlfriend and her children to my parents. And I mean, obviously that was slightly nerve-wracking, but it went pretty well. No fatalities. So, that was good. Otherwise, I've been ploughing through a variety of items for review, both for AVF and for other people. Lots and lots of random items, hopefully some interesting bits and bobs coming through, which I'll update the in-house spreadsheet for, Phil, don't worry. And then other peculiar items as well. And then, as we never talk about television at the end of the podcast because we would run out of time, I'm delighted that Foundation is back on Apple TV, and it's still bonkers, and it's still taking enormous liberties with the book because it has to take enormous liberties with the book, but it's still one of the most beautiful television programs I've ever seen. So that's back on, and I'm happy with that.
Excellent. Good stuff. Jules, what have you been up to?
Well, yeah, I couldn't make the last podcast. I was away in Bridlington.
Oh, right.
Yes, it gets very exotic, doesn't it? Yes, we've just discovered the Yorkshire coastline. So we were at Whitby a while back, and we're going back to Whitby later on. Yeah. One thing that will interest you, Phil, is I was going for a jog on the promenade and decided to go up to the. There's a higher bit, and you go through a set of bushes. I don't know why that bit shouldn't interest you, but when I came in. When I came out through these bushes, there were thousands of runners, like a bomber stream. I was like, "What the hell is this?" So I was just caught up in the flow of these runs. Of course, it was park run. I've never done park before. Never done it before. They were going quite a pace as well. So, but I was going in that direction anyway, so I joined in.
Yeah, it's good. Park runs all over the country. There'll be park runs local to you all over the country. It's my favourite little thing to do on a Saturday morning.
Yes, because you're massively into it now, aren't you?
Elite athlete these days.
Yeah.
Something like that. Good stuff. Bread, been to Bread quite recently, actually, myself.
I've never been. I can only remember that Viz spoof poster, which with the fat slags on it, which simply says Bridlington, it's full of slags. So I apologise to people who are resident in Bridlington, because I'm sure that's very unfair. But that's literally the only thing I can remember about it.
It's full of noisy seagulls. The seagulls are, you need earplugs if you're going to stay in Bridlington, because they are making one hell of a racket day and night. They never get a rest.
Do you remember the Skegness T-shirt, Ed? I think it said, "Come to Skegness, it's shit."
It's that was a great book of them. There was on the Dig for Victory thing. There was Shag for Victory as well. So they covered all the bases. So.
Good stuff. But yeah, if you get a chance to go to Bread, it's lovely. It really is. It's a nice coast there, and they've got a nice theatre there as well. A big arc.
Yeah, the Bastille were on when we were there. Yeah. Never heard of them, but I guess they're big.
There you go. So you mentioned running. I did my first run event recently, Durham's City Run, 5K and 10K. I did the 5K. I'm not quite up to 10K yet, but yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. It absolutely chucked it down. Soaked to the skin, but thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great fun, and the people lining the streets giving you encouragement and cheering you on and all the rest of it. And of course, the finish was at the cathedral, but you got to get up there, and that was the last leg. And the thing was, we came through the shopping centre, and I thought, we'll just turn left here because the cathedral's up there, and we must be near the end now, because I just checked my watch. No, I had to double back and go back up another hill and turn and come back. So that was the heartbreaking bit, because I thought I'd already prepared myself mentally that I'm up the hill now to the cathedral. No, I had to go the other way, then up the hill to the cathedral. So yeah, getting into this.
And is it all cobbled streets up to the cathedral?
The last bit is cobbled, and of course it was absolutely chucking it down the rain.
Slippy.
So very, very slidey. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that. And also getting back into the car club and that kind of thing in my spare time. So it's nice to have an interest. When your hobby becomes your full-time job, it's nice to have another interest that you can get away from, and people aren't asking you what's the best TV under 500 quid that can buy every 5 minutes of the day. So yeah, we can get back into that. You managed to get out of the house, Ian?
No, you're making me feel quite guilty now. The only thing that I've been running is my Xbox. That's about as much mileage as I get out of everything. But I mean, I actually did quite the opposite. I gave myself the very rare luxury of a whole weekend off. So a weekend where I just set aside, just had no work, no short. Well, even though I should technically have been doing a few bits and pieces, I just ignored everything, left Skype, closed email, closed everything, and just shut down for a weekend, which was just a rare luxury. Me, Xbox, television, lots of sports on TV. It was just really nice just to effectively just get away from out of the office, which is very hard to do when you work from home, but to actually get out of the office for a weekend was quite nice.
Yeah, no, it is. I think people think working from home is easy. No, 20 years of it, and I still struggle with it. Making that separation, Ian, it's difficult. So, Martin, when you're not phoning up CEO companies and pestering them for free fixes on your amplifiers, what else have you been up to?
Delivering some more trainings, dealer trainings at Habitech in Basingstoke. Also, since I last saw you all, we had Henley Royal Regatta here in Henley, where I live. And usually, because of our family's history with that event, it's usually pretty busy. But anyway, it's great fun. I think I've been to the cinema a couple of times. I've been to see the new Indiana Jones and Mission Impossible 7, Dead Reckoning. I really enjoyed Indy 5. I didn't understand all these sort of lukewarm reviews. Yes, the ending is a bit over the top, but I think the set pieces along the way are as good as anything from the Spielberg, the Spielberg entries. So I was pretty impressed, and I loved Mission Impossible 7. A little too long though.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm getting dragged to the Barbie movie this weekend. So
Barbie.
I wanted to see Oppenheimer, but I'm getting dragged to Barbie because we've got the grandkids this weekend. So unfortunately, I'm getting a pink shirt on. I have to go.
I think it's all the feedback I have suggests that it's wildly entertaining.
Yeah.
And probably, I have to say, considerably less gloomy than Oppenheimer. I mean, I went to see Mission Impossible. I forgot to say that. I went to the cinema of my own volition.
Excellent.
Which was exciting.
Well, we wanted to go and couldn't get in anywhere because it was because of the rain. Obviously, yeah, it's November already. Everything booked out, fully booked out. Couldn't get in to see anything. So you're lucky that you got in there, Ed.
You should have come to Milton Keynes. We went to see it in the IMAX, and I would put it at somewhere between 10 and 15% full. Honestly.
Really? We struggle to get tickets for anything. So.
I'm going to BFI IMAX tomorrow to see Oppenheimer tomorrow afternoon.
All right, you'll enjoy that then.
And that's 1570 projection, so that really is a special event. I'm so much looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a few comments on Twitter just how fantastic it looks in 70. So you'll enjoy that. You really will. Right, so that's us all caught up. We just need to do competitions before we move on. So Ed, competitions?
Yes. Right. Excuse me. Oh, it's just rebooting itself. Right. Okay. You can win. Open to all is a Humax A1 4K Ultra HD streaming box and 3 Humax Wi-Fi smart plugs bundles. That closes on Wednesday, the 26th of July at midnight. So if you're listening to this after that point, I'm sorry, that's no longer a goer. But if you're listening to it now, just get stuck in. Exclusive offers for patrons include Super Mario Brothers movie on Blu-ray. Now, is that the Bob Hoskins one?
Oh, I don't know.
If it is, I have to admit that it's so dreadful, it's actually magnificent. So yeah, that's a very, very good. Oh, if it's the new one, then it's irrelevant. Justice League War World on Blu-ray. Evil Dead Rise limited edition 4K UHD bundle with t-shirt and poster. That sounds quite cool. And then additionally, Scream 6 on Blu-ray, sci-fi fic Lola on Blu-ray, The Black Demon on Blu-ray, the Donnie Yen directed starring Sakura on Blu-ray, Neil Marshall's latest The Lair on Blu-ray, Ride On starring Jackie Chan on Blu-ray, Frontiers limited edition Blu-ray, Body Horror May on Blu-ray, and Cosa Nostra 3 film collection starring legend Franco Nero limited edition Blu-ray. Head on over to avforums.com/competitions to enter. All competitions are open to eligible AV Forums members or patrons resident in the UK.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Ed. There are no previous competition winners to read out this week. There will be soon because people have been winning.
The Spears and Munsel's collection competition is ended.
Yes. Actually, I could have done that. I could have told you who the winners are, but no.
You'll have to wait. You know, they know who they are, and if you haven't been informed that you've won one, I'm afraid you haven't. So
there you go. That's a good way of putting it, Ed. Martin, new patrons.
Yes, we have one new patron, Mark B.
Thank you very much, Mark B. It really is appreciated. Thank you very much for all your support, and thanks to all the patrons for your support. It really is appreciated. Right, time to get on with the show. So moving on to TV, lots to get through TV-wise at the moment. I've got Hisense behind me. I've been retesting the Samsung S95C sitting next to me here. New Panasonics arrived as well. So I've got the MZ980. It turned up recently. And I've also got two TCLs to look at the moment, the C845 and the C745. So lots of TVs. We're going to come back to the Hisense in a minute. But there has been some TV news, Ian. So why don't you tell us about Loewe?
Yeah, Loewe, quite literally expanding its build I-series with the announcement that it's adding a 77-inch OLED model alongside the existing 48, 55 and 65-inch options that are already available. The TV gets the full title of the build i77DR+, because it also comes with the 1 terabyte hard disk recorder that we've seen previously in the range. There's also support for the likes of Dolby Vision as well as HDR10, and it also comes with the company's latest OS 7 smart TV platform. Perhaps the most notable thing about it is the price, with the i77 coming in at £5,999, which is still an awful lot of money, but it's not quite as much as Loewe's other existing 77-inch OLED, which is the S77, which launched a couple of years ago and is still likely to set you back the best part of £10,000. So even though you couldn't technically call it the budget model in the Loewe range, it's still, you know, a rather more affordable price point for people who want to get.
And of course, Loewe, it's all about design and function and so on. It's not necessarily just about the panel that's being used. So yeah, 77-inch. It's becoming quite a regular size now, OLED wise, and lots of manufacturers reporting that that's the size they're going for at the minute, because that's where new business is coming in. And Roku really making a storm on the market, or an assault on the market, I should say, at the minute, Ian. Lots of people announcing Roku TVs round about the entry-level price points.
Yeah, Sharp, the latest company to get on the Roku production line. But these very much come in the rather more affordable window compared to the Loewe TVs. But the new the Sharp Roku TV range is set to start rolling out in August. Don't have all the details on the specific models, although I've got good reason to suspect it will be called the FD series. But as the name suggests, these are Sharp TVs, so they'll be running the latest Roku OS. What we do know is that the screens will be available in 24 to 65-inch sizes with a combination of 4K and HD displays. Presumably smaller ones will be HD, larger ones will be 4K. Those 4K models also come with Dolby Vision along with HDR10, HLG, and Dolby Audio. Talking to the prices though, these start at just £150 and go up to £450, which sounds very much like you could be able to get your hands on a 65-inch OLED for as little as £450. You know, and even though it's not likely to compare with some of the big name brands out there, it's still a decent price tag for some people in the current climate.
That's not going to be an OLED at that price.
That's the details that I've got. Hang on, have I put OLED in by mistake? Yeah, no, it's not OLED. Sorry.
Yeah, I say it's 450 quid. I'll see you later. Yeah. I'm off to get one.
Yeah. No, that's very much a typo. Let's just let me delete the O in that.
Right. Okay.
That's because I've been doing. Because I wrote up the Loewe story before it, so I just had OLED on my mind. Yes, £450 for 65-inch OLED would be a bargain price, but £450 for a 65-inch, likely to be an LED LCD, is still not bad.
It's and of course, developing story that Polaroid are also launching Roku TVs. Yep. Boom, boom, tish, here all week. Try the veal. Right, let's move on. I've got to talk about a TV that is in for review at the moment. The Samsung QN95C review went up on Friday. If you've missed it, it's on the homepage. Go check that one out. That is their flagship 4K TV. Even though they have a QD OLED, they insist that they're QLED. QN95C is the 4K flagship. I don't understand that one either, but there you go. So the one behind me is the Hisense. It's the U7K. Problem with Hisense last year, and they scored 7 out of 10 in their reviews last year, was that the models in the UK were different from models around the world, even though they had the same model number. And what we were finding was that people were watching YouTube videos of a review of the US version of that TV that had lots of dimmable zones and features that the UK set didn't have. The main one being that the US set was VA and the UK set was an IPS panel. So completely different picture quality, but the same model number. And of course, people were watching YouTube, which is global. The internet is global. So people watch these reviews and they look and they see the product and the product number and assume, and quite rightly so, that it's the same product in the UK because it's got the same model. And they got found out that it wasn't the same, and lots of people were quite disappointed. So that was all fed back to Hisense last year, and credit to Hisense, they listened. They have changed it this year, so it's now a worldwide set. So anything with U7K, whether it's in the US, UK, Europe, whatever, they are the same TV. They may have slight differences in terms of tuners and so on, because different countries, different territories and so on. But the fundamentals behind the TV in terms of picture quality, in terms of the panel, the picture processing and so on, are exactly the same. Same dimming zones, same panels being used, same processor and so on. And I've got to say, they've stepped the game up this year. Picture quality at this level of the market, which is under £1,000, is really, really good. It is a mini LED TV. It has a number of zones. I'll give you the exact number in the written review. We'll keep you hanging on for the written review, but we'll give you the exact technical details within that. I've only just started testing the TV. There are a few little issues which have been fed back to Hisense. So in terms of HDR, it's a little bit aggressive in its clipping. So if you send it a 1000 nit piece of content that has 1000 nit metadata, it is clipping the TV and you're losing quite a bit of detail. Send it 600 nit and you get the full detail. Send it 1000 nit, it's clipping. Send it 4000 nits, it doesn't like it. It clips everything, and 10,000 nits is not good. So it's a little bit too aggressive. So I've sent that back, that feedback back to Hisense, and asked them to have a look at it. They've said they're going to have a look at that, and if they can fix it in firmware, they will fix it. It's not a major issue because there's very little over 1000 nits these days. There's the odd disc that's maybe 4000, but everything else tends to be around about 1000 in terms of metadata that's on the discs. The only other thing is it's a little bit further behind the Samsung in terms of local dimming algorithm. Again, it's Hisense getting to grips with it, and it's nothing major. It's nothing that I would put me off using it as a second TV or whatever. It's just, it's a slight issue there that it doesn't quite get as black. It doesn't quite handle the blooming in the same way, but then it doesn't do what the Samsung does. And the major thing with the Samsung is it might do nearly 2000 nits peak brightness on a 10% window, but you lose that because it's got blooming suppression, and it immediately dims the image to try and stop the blooming and kills the dynamic range. So the Hisense doesn't do that, but you do get a little bit more blooming. And this is one of the things that companies are wrestling with at the minute, because you have Sony who won't go for aggressive blooming suppression. They want more of the dynamic range. So their black bars will light up if something's next to it in a 2:3:5:1 movie, and there's a bright object next to the black bars. The black bars will light up on a Sony, and Sony say that's deliberate. They do that because they want full dynamic range. They want to show you everything that's in the image, and they're trying to replicate what the BVM grading monitors are doing in their TVs. Whereas Samsung, their black bars are completely and utterly black. Even if a bright object goes close to them, they're quite aggressive in terms of local dimming. The Hisense is kind of in the middle. It's not quite as relaxed as the Sony, not quite as aggressive as the Samsung. And I've been really impressed in terms of measurement. It's got filmmaker mode. Filmmaker mode is accurate. It's obviously accurate out of the box. It's not going to be accurate for your environment or your video chain. But if you want something that looks good, and let's face it, you ain't getting this calibrated at the price point. You're not going to spend the 400 quid that it would cost you. Having something that is accurate out of the box like this is really needed at this level of the market. And Hisense do deliver on that one. I've had it next to the TCL. I'm not going to spoil anything in terms of comparisons, but they are coming up in the reviews, so keep your eyes peeled for the reviews. And again, quantum dot filter in both of those TVs as well, so you got really good color volume as well. So yeah, this level of the market really starting to heat up, and where companies have maybe moved away from the flagship side, apart from Samsung, who still ask a lot of money for their mini LED TVs. Hisense, TCL, Sony still ask quite a bit of money for theirs, but round about this kind of price point, round about £1,000 to £1,500 for a 55, 65 inch screen size, you're getting more quality these days. You're getting better picture quality. You're getting filmmaker mode and modes like that. Dolby Vision also on a set like this. So when I was talking about clipping, I was talking about an HDR10 signal being fed to the TV. You feed it obviously a Dolby Vision signal, and it has dynamic metadata. So it tells the TV scene for scene or frame for frame what that scene should look like in terms of peak brightness and blacks and all everything in between. And the TV sorts it out within its capabilities. And I've got to say, Dolby Vision does look very nice on the Hisense and the TCL. So great TVs at this price point. And of course, the main thing here, and the reason why people do still navigate towards mini LED, is because of the brightness in terms of a bright room. And to get an OLED TV that would match these TVs in a bright room, you're talking about a G3 from LG, which is going to cost you considerably more money, or the S95C from Samsung is going to cost you considerably more money. The Panasonic with the heat sinks is going to cost you more money. So yeah, it's a nice area of the market. The other side is image retention. You don't have those worries here. So if you're a heavy gamer, somebody who likes to game a lot, these TVs should suit as well. So the reviews are coming up. I've been looking at lots of mini LED TVs. Still waiting on the Sony X95L coming in. Once that is in and I've tested that, I'll have tested most of the big TVs this year in the mini LED side of things. So Jules, they are still an important part of the market, even though for enthusiasts might tend to head towards OLED a little bit more. There's still a market for these TVs.
Yeah, around that price point, absolutely. If you haven't got the money to go for a G3 or something like that, then yeah, if you need that peak brightness, it's getting closer, isn't it? I mean, I did a Samsung S90C last week, which was just over 1,000 nits. They're quite reasonably priced. There is a place for them in that market, though. But we the OLEDs are pushing that envelope, aren't they? They're really, hitting no longer can you say OLEDs are not bright enough, because they are. You just got to have the cash, so there is a place for these TVs.
Yeah, that's where we are at the moment. But the days are gone where your first recommendation for somebody looking for a TV is, well, if it's a bright room, you need a LCD TV. No, you don't. You don't these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks like a very interesting part of the market. I've looked at 3 of the sets so far, waiting on the Sony coming in, and of course we'll do all the comparison pieces. They'll all be measured. They'll all be calibrated, and so on. And again, it's where filmmaker and Dolby Vision have value at this end of the market, Jules, as well, because you're a professional calibrator, but you're not going to get people who spend £1,000 on a TV coming to you for calibration. So these things do matter a little bit more, don't they?
It's happened, but yeah, if your TV is not as expensive, you're going to want to be more accurate out the box. The problem with that is that you run into tolerance of parts. So the cheaper the parts, the more variability there is. So it's kind of you give with one and take away with the other hand.
Yeah. And this is where Dolby Vision was designed to be in the marketplace for these TVs that have the lower capabilities, because it can be mapped dynamically then in terms of using the metadata and making sure that matches what the TV is capable of. I mean, you're trying to get 5 pints into a 2-pint container in some cases. So yeah, good stuff. Right. Any questions on TVs? We'll have a quick look now before I move on. So let's very quickly. Paul Munger says he's just started a 12-hour night shift. Don't miss 12-hour night shifts. And feel free to stretch this episode out as long as possible. Well, I'm sorry, we'll do the 90 minutes that we're contracted for. If you don't mind. I don't fancy doing a 12-hour shift. I know the other guys don't either. But hopefully it's a nice quick shift for you tonight, Paul.
You could rewatch it.
You could, yeah, just put it on loop. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He also said Barbie started out funny but soon got old. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting, but we'll see. What about 8K except Samsung? I'm not really sure what that question is. If you want to give us a little bit more details, we'll come back to that one. And Paul again says you'd like to see a comparison between the TCL 98 QM8 and Samsung's new mid-range 98 inch. Big screen sizes, I'd have to go to them. So getting them together at 98 inches, logistically, it's impossible, unfortunately. And the M8 is not coming to the UK as far as I'm aware. So again, I'd have to jump on a plane and go and see it somewhere else. So I think the likelihood of those things happening are probably a little bit far stretched at the minute, but we'll see what we can do. Right, that's the questions so far. If you've got questions, get them in on the live chat. Or if you're watching or listening a little bit later in the week, don't forget you can use the forums. Go to the bottom of the forum list, find a podcast forum in this episode and ask your questions, or send them on an email, podcast@avforums.com. We're going to home cinema next.
If you'd like to support the AV Forums podcast on a regular basis, then why not become a patron? Head over to patreon.com/AV Forums to sign up. You can also make a one-off donation through the Super Chat or via streamlabs.com/AV Forums. All donations help us to improve the website and the podcasts. Thank you to all our supporters.
Right, so home cinema section of the podcast. And again, quite a busy show tonight. We've got a few bits and pieces to get through here. So let's go to news first. Monitor Audio have launched a new subwoofer series. Ian, tell us all about it.
Yes, 3 new subwoofers coming our way in August under the name of the Anthra Subwoofer Series. It's made up of the W10, W12 and W15 models, with the names reflecting the size of the side, as you might have guessed. And also, as you might expect, there's a sliding scale in terms of both their output and the pricing. They're running Class D amplifiers offering peaks from 500 up to 2,500 watts. And price tags ranging from £1,650 to £2,500. Subs come with CCAM cones and are the first in Monitor Audio's range to use their new Rigid Surface Technology 2 system to help reduce the distortion. And they also come with thickened MDF cabinets to add extra strength. As you might expect, they also come with access to the company's Maestro Unite app. And like I say, yeah, be coming out hopefully pretty soon. It's due out in August, so anytime soon, want to keep an eye on perhaps.
Yep, and we've got these lined up for review as well.
Oh,
so,
good. I mean, historically, Monitor Audio has been pretty good at these. I mean, the name is odd, but the technology, it looks like it's going to be sturdy and relatively capable. I mean, obviously, all of these subs have their work cut out against the dedicated brands, but you know, it sounds, if nothing else, the board numbers look interesting. So I'll be interested to see how they get on once.
Once it's
driven to death.
Matt's looking at these, so that's one of his big first reviews for AV Forum. So he's looking at those. So those should be coming up soon. I think there's a little bit of delay getting the samples through, but once they're here, we'll be getting stuck into them. And sticking with subwoofers and couch potatoes. I think it's time to reveal what the Couch Potato CP8 is. I'm going to guess it's an 8-inch something because we're talking subwoofers. Martin, tell us all about it.
Yeah, so this is the Earthquake CP8. I mean, Earthquake is a great name for a subwoofer company anyway, but the CP obviously stands for Couch Potato, which is also a great name. So this is a subwoofer which is supposed to slide under a couch or under a bed. It's really a small room subwoofer. You wouldn't expect this subwoofer's output to really accommodate a large room, but that's the idea. It goes under furniture. It wouldn't fit under the couch in my home cinema room. So as advised in the manual, you can also butt it up to a sofa or even have some distance away from furniture. And it can also actually sit on its side. So a typical application there might be between a sofa and a rear wall, for example. It's worth mentioning that this is not a seat shaker or a transducer, but
that was
a
going to be
regular
my
sub.
question.
Yeah.
That was the first question I was going to ask. Is it a transducer? Because they were quite popular for a number of years, and you did put them inside your furniture, inside your sofa, and so on.
Yeah, most definitely not. So again, as a category of product, I was slightly, confused about it, but it makes sense for Earthquake to move into this area. They're known really for in-car subwoofers, although they have a lot of residential products and pro DJ products and that kind of thing.
Well, this is where I was going to come in, Martin, because this is, if you look at any OEM system in car audio nowadays, the subwoofers tend to be hidden underneath the driver's seat and the passenger seats now. Certainly my Ford Puma was like that, and the BMW that I tested recently with the Bowers and Wilkins, it had transducers, but also had subwoofers, 8-inch subwoofers under the chair. So that makes sense if they are in the automotive side of things.
Yeah, totally. And so I was a little skeptical about it, because I thought, how can it sort of do what it claims to do, which is to shake the seat, but also produce some kind of refinement when it comes to movies and music as well. And I have to say, I was really, really impressed with it. It's a great piece of kit. Just to go back to the specs, it's a low-rise 19.3 centimeters in height and about 60 centimeters long. I couldn't get any information on the specific manufacturing processes, but I assume it's an MDF box, and the electronics and connections plate are actually on the underside, on the belly, if you have the driver also facing downwards, which is exactly as it would be. It's an 8-inch, sorry, it would be if it was under furniture. It's an 8-inch paper cone driver, and like I said, the amp plate also faces downwards. It's got 150 watts of output, care of a Class AB amp, not Class D, with 300 watts claimed peak. As well as gain, crossover, and phase controls, you can also link it up with a high-level connection if that's your preferred setup. Like I said, in tests, it really did produce a large amount of grunt and really managed to shake my sofa during the launch of Apollo 13 in the film of the same name. Same in Interstellar as well, in the shuttle sequences. It really was a very powerful output. I was really surprised, because in my cinema room, I've got 3 M&K X10s, and while it obviously couldn't compete with that kind of output, nor its subtlety and sheer weight, but it did a surprisingly good job for a single sub. And I think if you daisy chain 2 of them, it would be a pretty impressive output. I was also surprised at how adept it was at music playback, with it, managing to disappear into the mix and allow rhythm sections to sound grounded and realistic, but certainly nothing offensive. I did notice on a couple of occasions that the sub could draw attention to itself and say, "I'm here," something that more perhaps reference subs wouldn't do so much. But this is not a high-end sub either. If you, like I said, if you have this in a bedroom or small living room, I think you'll definitely feel its effects. And really, really, like I said, great sub for a small room. My big problem, though, Phil, is the pricing here. Yeah. It is more than twice the price GBP than in the United States.
Ooh.
Now, Earthquake has a direct sales model stateside, so I think we all get it here that when a distributor gets it, he's got to deal with the overheads of warehousing and the rest of it, and the overheads associated with distribution. But twice the price is just too much, and it almost takes this sub into a different product class category entirely. It's £690 here. Stateside, it's $399 plus tax delivered.
Yeah. Another thing, just looking at the specs, this has been on the market for some time now
Yeah.
in the States anyway, hasn't it? So it looks like it's been 13 years on the market.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To be fair, it's fairly niche. I mean, not just because it fits in a niche, but I mean, it's one of those things where presumably you get the technology together and you go, well, that ain't broke, so we ain't going to fix it.
Yeah.
One thing that did occur to me, Martin, whilst you were describing this, presumably its performance is in some way going to vary depending on the sort of relative density and materials used in the furniture under which you've placed it.
Yes, good point. I think that would be the case. I wasn't able to try it in too many different locations or with different furniture types. I wish my flat was big enough.
Well,
but yes, I think I'm sure all those things would play into the final result. Yeah.
In other words, if you for whatever reason have decided on church pews as your
as your chosen,
it's probably not going to be as effective. So something to bear in mind.
Yeah. But I guess, Martin, for some of us out there, we don't have the luxury of having dedicated rooms, or we don't have the luxury of space. So something like this that can be discreetly hidden away, but again, give a fairly decent performance is a nice idea.
Exactly that. And in fact, when I opened it up, for some reason it immediately screamed gaming to me. I think it really is something that if a student or a gaming enthusiast has a portable projector in their digs or in their room or whatever, I think that would where it would find.
Yeah. But again, the problem is the price. If it was at the US dollar price, it makes sense. At the UK price, wow.
Yes.
There's far better products on the market, really.
Yeah, although there isn't too much competition, I found here in the UK for this product category. I really dug in deep on the internet, and there are quite a few products in Europe, but there's very little that's apples to apples here in the UK. So it might hold quite a unique proposition over here.
Okay, but yeah, interesting product. It's definitely for those that are a little bit short of space. But yeah, thanks very much for the review, Martin. And of course, Martin's review is on the homepage this week. If you listen to the podcast as it goes out, it's in the top slot tonight. So go and have a look at that if you're interested in finding out a little bit more. And if you've got any direct questions for Martin a little bit later in the week, shove them in the discussion thread, and Martin will answer those when he's got the time to have a quick look in. He shall do that. Now, something a little bit different. We don't normally do this unless there is a gaming review to talk about, and there is this week. Ian's actually written a games review, something that he's been playing, and it's not Car Wash Simulator or Powered Wash Simulator or How to Make Your Tea Simulator. It's something else completely, Ian.
There was a car wash simulator that came out recently, so that was quite close to hitting the mark. But no, on this occasion, it's a game called Exoprimal. And if you like nothing more than teaming up with a bunch of friends to slaughter a relentless horde of rampaging dinosaurs who fall out of the sky at the behest of a surreal AI entity, then this could be the game for you. Because let's face it, who doesn't enjoy killing hordes of endless dinosaurs for fun? It's available on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and it comes courtesy of the creator of the Dino Crisis series, which some of you might have heard of. And although this game isn't technically a part of the Dino Crisis franchise, it's not exactly a stretch to see those kind of arcade influences at play here. One thing I'll do, I'll go against norm. Normally I'll start with the positives and then drop the negatives in, but I'll start with the negatives, or rather the limitations of the game to start off with. First of all, it's multiplayer only, so there's no single player campaign to speak of. And it also means that, you need a constant online connection to play it. So if you've got a sketchy broadband and you keep dropping out, you're going to get kicked back to the game menu quite a lot. But it does come with crossplay on other platforms. But if you want to hook up with friends, another limitation is it only applies if they're on the same Xbox or PlayStation network. So if you're on Xbox Series X, you can play with Xbox One gamers, but you can't play with PS4 and PS5 gamers and vice versa. The other thing to add is that there's currently only one game mode for it. It's a mode called Dino Survival, which is basically 5 versus 5 PvE race to the finish line. There's a few PvP elements thrown in for good measure if you like shooting people rather than just dinosaurs. But essentially, it's two teams racing against each other. The first team to complete the missions wins, basically. But it doesn't matter if you win or lose. All the time, you're constantly leveling up and you're evolving. It does mean that, therefore, there's only 12 game modes or game mission types that get rotated, which does mean there's going to be a lot of repetition limits.
Presumably, all of them involve killing a healthy quantity of dinosaurs.
It's pretty much, yeah. They flower up in some slight variants, but basically just pods open up in the sky, dinosaurs drop out, and it's like, right, go kill them. First thing wins. And it's a simple premise, and you'd think you'd get bored of it after a while. And to be fair, there's a bit of a grind, there's a bit of a repetition, but it's quite hard to get bored of because it is just that simple trigger clenching arcade fun. It does come, there's like a choice, the 10 exosuits, you basically get to dress up in mech suits to do it, which makes it, even more empowering for some. And it's nice because there's quite a mix of them as well. So they all come with their own unique abilities and so you can develop your own style. People that play a lot of games will be familiar with like the assault class, the tank class, and the support classes, which these suits kind of all kind of factor into. And then so you can kind of tailor things your own way. Like I say, they come with their unique abilities you can unlock, so you can kind of fine tune up to 10 basically different characters depending on how you want to play. And the good thing is, even though good players will always level up fast and they'll be the biggest and the best, and you'll walk into a gunfight at some point, be dead in a second and not know why. And it's just because that guy over there's been playing it for like 4 weeks and you've been playing it for 4 hours. But it does have that nice variety where even if you are a bit rubbish, you can just kind of stand at the back and still feel like you're contributing in some way. There's always that kind of, feeling of being involved. It's like the support class is a favourite. I found it on Battlefield 2042 and I was rubbish on that. Just being a support class, just to run around and heal people, keep the guys who are really good in the fight. It kind of keeps you involved, and it makes you feel like you're doing something, even if you're not really sure what you're doing. Yeah, but it's good fun. And that really is kind of the essence of the positives, is that even though it's a bit of a grind, it is still good fun for the sort of the duration of how long you decide to play it for, which does kind of factor into whether it becomes value for money. Because if you want to buy it at full price, it'll cost you £50. But the plus side is it is a day one Game Pass release. So if you're on PC or Xbox and subscribe to Game Pass, you can effectively play it for free. I'll put it in air quotes before people say it's not free if it's on Game Pass, because you still pay the monthly subscription fee for it. So if you are on Game Pass, then it becomes a bit more of a, hey, why not? Because like I say, it's a lot of fun, either in short bursts or if you settle down. It has that nice kind of, I'll just have one more match mentality to it. So you think you're going to play it for 10 minutes, end up playing it for 3 hours, and you don't really know where the time's gone. One sort of upside of it that I will think is worth giving credit to is that even though it is a multiplayer only game, Capcom have done a really nice job of kind of wrapping the package up in what feels like a single player campaign framework. By that, I mean, it's got cutscenes, it's got a load of video and audio files to unlock as means of exposition to kind of explain just why these dinosaurs are dropping out of the sky and why this rampant AI has made you travel back in time to when the dinosaurs first started dropping out. I'm not going to explain the story. It doesn't make sense. But the fact is, it doesn't have to make sense. But what Capcom has done, they've kind of justified it to an extent. They've explained it. They've put some effort into making you feel like you're progressing through a story. And to help with that, what they've done, rather than just dropping all the content on you at the start, you unlock, or things sort of develop and progress as you play through more and more matches. So at the start, you'll just be facing a horde of angry raptors, and it's quite straightforward. But then by the time you get deeper into the game, you're fighting raptors, pterodons, a giant T-Rex will come wandering out of nowhere. You'll have carnosaurs, stegosaurus, the works, and it becomes absolute carnage, but in the best possible way. But it kind of escalates that up, so you're not dropped into that. It takes its time, and it makes it
Ian, I'm assuming when you say that they drop out of the sky, they don't, that it's from a safe, they don't just sort of like turn into
literally it's like 10 feet above your head.
Oh right, okay, fine. They don't just sort of like hit
it's like a vortex appears in the sky, and so you get a bit of warning of where they're going to drop out. It's not like they boom from nowhere. So
that sounds more reasonable.
It would be more. Sorry, I was wondering actually if the danger of the dinosaurs was actually that they were dropping from several thousand feet at speed, and it was just simply
squashed.
Yeah, that would be a real down. You spent hours and hours investing in this patch, all of a sudden everyone gets wiped out by a T-Rex just going. But I don't know. It could add to the fun. You can actually get to play as some of the T-Rexes and some of the bigger animals as well. It's got this thing called Dominators, where at various points in the match, each side will get to kind of drop a player in as a playable alpha dinosaur, basically. So you can roam into the other team's game while they're trying to make as faster progress as they can through the game. Like you could drop a T-Rex or a Triceratops and go rampaging through them and sort of wipe out as much of their squad as they can to slow them down. So that's quite another fun little quirk of it. And it does add a tactical element as well, because there's a final mission in the game where you're playing more directly alongside each other. So whilst you're both trying to complete the same mission, you can kind of stop and start shooting each other for fun, if you like. So you're kind of thinking, you want to focus on shooting dinosaurs, or should we focus on shooting each other? What are we doing? It's kind of, it mixes it up quite nicely.
But is that a Whoopi Goldberg cameo in there?
Oh, Ian predates Theodore Rex.
Oh, does he? Yeah, so he does. Yeah, he won't get the reference.
I mean, you could. It'd be interesting.
The first time in a long time I've made you feel young.
You could use the game engine for Theodore Rex, the computer game, and frankly, I urge Capcom to crack on with that right now, because I'd physically buy a copy.
There's DLC on the way. You never know your luck.
As long as you could persuade Whoopi Goldberg back to voice her character. I wonder how much money, whether the entire gross domestic product of the United States.
Yeah, I don't think we need to see Whoopi Goldberg in that jumpsuit, though, do we?
No, perhaps not.
No. Right, Ian, thank you very much for the games review. And there's more games review coming up. One's going to drop in a couple of days, you said, isn't there? So you can look forward to that.
I do have something on the way, Tectonica.
Excellent.
It's a new PC game on the way. And I think that might also be on Xbox Game Pass as well, but I'll have to double check.
Okay, excellent. Well, if you're interested in that, keep an eye on the homepage. It'll be popping up in a couple of days. And we're heading over to Ed's Hi-Fi Corner next.
If you enjoy the podcast on YouTube, then please like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, then please leave us a rating on your podcast app. We invite you to email questions and feedback to podcast@avforums.com and join in with this episode's discussion thread in the podcasts forum at AV Forums.
Right, okay, it's me talking for a bit. I can't match dinosaurs falling from the sky, so I need to get that in early. I also need to kick off by saying a farewell, because it's time for Jules to do his physical exercise. So thank you for your session, Jules.
I've got to catch up with Phil.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's becoming intensely competitive. Well, it's intensely competitive for some of you, not all of us, but
but no couch potatoes here.
Yeah. See you, Jules.
See you later, Jules.
Cheers, guys.
Right. Okay. It's relatively quiet out there at the moment. We have just the one news story, but Ian will cover some of the basics. A speaker brand is returning to the UK because they've got a new distributor.
Audio Physic. It's the company in question. I have to force myself not to say psychic every time I read it out, because when I was typing it, I always had psychic in my head, and there's a correlation there, I'm sure. But yeah, it's one of those stories where the headline pretty much sums everything up, with Audio Psychic, German company making high-end speakers, signed a distribution deal in the UK with Cyrus Audio. Company previously had a deal in place with Elite Audio UK, and it looks like that they'll remain on their list of retailers. But this is a new partnership which looks to further increase their profile and their presence in the UK, with Cyrus Audio already, well established on its own for its amplifiers, CD players, and streamers. Admittedly, I nearly said psychic. Audio Physic. It's a new name on me, so I can't say too much about their speakers, but they look like they do some good stuff.
No, I can take over at that bit. They do make some excellent speakers. This is good news for all concerned. Audio Physic had been around for a while, and on all the occasions I've heard their speakers, both in the UK and abroad, I've generally been very impressed. I think it helps Cyrus in terms of having something to partner up with. For years, they were distributors of Vienna Acoustics, and that sort of fell by the wayside. This is another decent match for Cyrus equipment, and it's bringing what is a very, very strong range of speakers to a wider audience. Elite Audio have done a fine job. They are very, very capable distributors, but obviously Cyrus gets into lots and lots of dealers, and hopefully there will be some take up on the Audio Physic product because it's very, very good. If you're interested in me having a look at some, I'm sure that we can speak to Cyrus and get something sorted there. But No, that's good news for all concerned. That's about it for news. It's been a bit quiet, really. So I will then move on to talking about a review, which is already on the front page. So I'm not going to go into this in extensive detail. But the spate of anniversary products that I was talking about in the podcast that we did last time is continuing in no uncertain terms. Bluesound has been around for a bit less time than some of the other people celebrating their anniversaries, but 10 years of making streamers is no small undertaking. More impressively, as best as I know, I'm sure that someone will leap into the comments if I've got this wrong, I'm pretty sure that every single Bluesound product ever made, so long as it physically is in working condition, will still join a BlueOS network of products and still talk and play nice with all of the new things. Now, that's a much more meaningful achievement. To be in business for 10 years is one thing. To keep everything supported in what is a relatively fast-moving, by hi-fi standards anyway, a relatively fast-moving category, that's a much bigger deal. So the Node X, the X marking the spot, meaning 10 in this instance, it's basically the same layout as the standard Node, which we've also reviewed sometime in the past. But visually, it's silver, which you may or may not like. There were some people not impressed by that at all in the comments, but other people were more positive, and I have to say, I think it looks quite smart. They have then, on a more meaningful level, done two things. The first is they've changed the DAC. It's gone from Burr Brown to an ESS unit. It's an altogether nicer DAC. It's more in keeping with what NAD use on their Bluesound digital devices, and this is a useful step forward. They've, without really changing the way of how it sounds, it is meaningfully better. A bit more detail. The measurements on the ESS DACs are extremely good, and so long as they've been implemented with any degree of sort of talent, they can be made to sound extremely effective. The other fitment is more interesting, and it had much more of an effect than I thought it was going to. If you look at a standard Node, you'll see that that's got a 3.5mm headphone socket on the front. This has a full fat 6.35mm socket, and behind it is a THX triple A. Now, in the same way that Ian has issues with Audio Physic and Psychic, I keep wanting to call this an aromatic amplifier, but it's achromatic amplifier. We've tested something certified with this before, but that was a little standalone dongle. This is the first time I've seen one fitted in a product. It makes a massive difference to how this product sounds as a headphone amp, in so much as I would genuinely recommend using it as a headphone amp. It's a significant step forward. It did really, really impressive things running with a pair of Focal Clear MGs, which is twice the price of the Node. I was really, really taken aback by just how much of a step forward it is. Now, the Node X, before I go any further, this is only going to be available until the end of 2023. It's a limited run product. There's no real limits within that. They'll try and keep churning them out to the end. But after 2023, it's just the standard Node only. I really, really hope if anyone from Bluesound or NAD or Lembrook is listening to this, I genuinely want to see more of this headphone amp being used in other products. It is extremely impressive. And if they've gone to the effort of engineering it and getting it fitted, I would really, really like to see more of it. There's a photo of my cat in the background of that photo. She spent the entire time this product was on review hiding behind it for reasons I've not fully understood. There is, I mean, otherwise the performance is a step forward. What's interesting is obviously in the not too distant past, I reviewed the Eversolo DMP A6, which is £50 more than the Node 10 Node X. I won't beat around the bush. The Eversolo is the better product. It does more. It has better connectivity. It's a more impressive piece of construction. It has a full color display. The thing is, in the many, many, many comments on the Eversolo thread, there were people who were concerned that an Android platform product, they were concerned about its longevity and how long it's going to be supported for, and whether Eversolo /Zidu can be relied upon to do that sort of thing. It's not for me to say whether they will or won't, but if you have concerns of that nature, a company celebrating its 10th anniversary who's still kept everything they've made running, that's going to put your mind at rest. And the Node X keeps the Eversolo honest. It's a really lovely piece of software as well, BlueOS. It's fully room compatible as well if you want to use that instead. This is a really, really capable streamer. And if you are shopping for one before the end of the year, I'd give it a listen. It's genuinely impressive. If you're using them both of them over RCA, the gap narrows a bit. The Eversolo's got XLR as well, which will be useful for some people. So no, give it a listen. I was genuinely impressed by it. It got a Best Buy. If you've got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But it's a really, I have to say, I think it's one of the less cynical anniversary products that have gone through, because it's still sensibly priced. It does some different things to the usual one, and I think it looks forwards rather than just sort of sits there celebrating and resting on its laurels. So I was sorry.
Who's the consumer for this? Who's the person that this is going to suit the most? Yeah.
If you are in a position where you are fed up with perhaps indifferent streaming and streaming service support built in on your AV receiver, this is an absolute must look at, because BlueOS is unconditionally stable. It supports everything bar Apple Music, and it does it in a really slick and cohesive way. If you're then looking at adding more Bluesound products to your house, BlueOS supports up to 42 products on a network. And you've got to have, well, basically you're running a bed and breakfast by the time that's an issue, isn't it? So that it's able to do multi-room and just basic non-irritating stability in a way that, you know, a lot of the inbuilt UPnP processors on AV receivers simply can't match. If you are one of the unusual set of people buying a stereo amplifier with no digital inputs and so on and so forth, this is also a very useful thing to look at. It has one other feature for stereo amp users, less so much AV receiver users, that may come in handy. Unlike the Eversolo, the Bluesound has HDMI ARC. Now, it's not as perfect an implementation of HDMI ARC as a one-box device, because whilst you can adjust the volume of it using your TV, it's never going to raise up past the level that the amplifier to which it's connected to is set to. So essentially, you can only lower the volume. But nevertheless, it will turn on, select the correct input if your TV is connected to it. So if you are using a stereo amp with no digital input, it will connect up quite effectively and give you an extra sort of layer of TV integration as well. It's also, obviously, there is the proviso that when I say something is idiot proof, someone goes and builds a better idiot. But you have to go some to fail to set this up correctly and to have it fall off networks and things like that. It's unconditionally stable. So it's streaming without any of the faff, and it's just everything that Bluesound is good at celebrated in one silvery box.
Excellent. Is your microphone wobbling about, Ed?
No, I think my head is. No, the table possibly. So we'll see where we go.
Okay, no bother. Right, I think we just need your album, vinyl, and playlist recommendations.
Yeah, well, there we go. Album is the album of the podcast because, as far as I know, it has no physical release. London Grammar, beloved of audiophiles. I mean, you know, it's effortlessly, as a group, they're climbing effortlessly into the hi-fi show stereotype band selection. You know, very high rates of playback. They've released a remix album on Friday. And some of the remixes are very, very good. Some of the remixes are not so good, but worth the price of admission alone. Without really telling anyone, there are 2 tracks which have not previously been released by London Grammar, which are actually on there as well. One of them called, where's it gone? Dancing, I think it's Dancing by Night. That's absolutely outstanding. It's not been on any of the albums previously. It's really, really good to listen to. There are some other, you know, relatively famous electronic acts have stuck their oar in on that. It's on all the major streaming services. You get 1 hour and 23 minutes of it, and you know, some of them, as I say, it's not like all remix albums. You'll gel with some more than others, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's got some good tunes on there, and they've managed, most of them managed to keep the sort of salient points of London Grammar, which is the lead vocalist sounds outstanding. So yeah, that's album. Vinyl release. I ummed and ahed about this one. Right. This is, hang on a second, I need to get this right because I keep saying it's one thing and it's actually something completely different. It is Starcatcher, not Star Chaser. Starcatcher by Greta Van Fleet. Now, Greta Van Fleet is an American band who fundamentally claim that they are not a Led Zeppelin tribute act, but they are a Led Zeppelin tribute. They released 2 albums, and both of those were extremely good, provided that you accepted what they were and you ignored their protestations that they weren't. They were good fun to listen to. Then they released a 3rd album, and when you start to believe your own hype, yeah, it was that. And it was, I don't think I've ever made it through in one sitting. I own it, but my God, it's not the easiest thing in the world to listen to. It was a bit of a mess. This is fundamentally them revisiting what went right about the first 2 albums, and it's a good listen. And the reason this is the vinyl release, not just because it allows me to talk about 2 different albums. You can listen to this on high res on streaming services that have high res, and it's obviously in the resolutions that the other streaming services have as well. It might well be in high res, but this is not a high resolution recording. This is very much an album where if you want to overcome perhaps some of the issues in its production, you want to listen to a fundamentally warm, cuddly and forgiving format in which to do it. So that's why I'd suggest it on vinyl if you have the option to listen to it. I'm afraid, like everything else the band has released, it is absurdly expensive. I think it's a bare minimum 30 quid for the bog standard release, and if you want one in funky colours, well into the 30s for a single disc release, which I think is a bit harsh. But nevertheless, it's a good listen. It's good fun, and if you've got all the Led Zeppelin back catalogue, it's a way of listening to sort of Led Zeppelin-y sounds without, listening to more Led Zeppelin. And then further to the discussions we had at the start of the podcast, I do hope that Phil's going to dig this out for his trip to the cinema tomorrow, because if you don't want to listen to the Barbie album, Spotify has gone and put it all together as a playlist for you.
Oh, dear God.
So I think that Phil needs to listen to that in his car to get into the spirit on the way down to the Barbie movie, and I'd be very disappointed if he doesn't. So that's why it is what it is. The summer is perhaps not a great time for playlists on any streaming services. It normally switches into music for being by the pool, and I don't know about anyone else here, but the weather in the UK has not been conducive to being anywhere near a pool at the moment. So I looked at this and I thought, why not? So that's on Spotify, and I'm fairly sure that Andy will drop the links to all of these things into the comments section at a later point, and you can enjoy the Barbie official playlist. And I hope that you genuinely do.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. Right, before we wrap up tonight, reviews coming in the next month, because we're fast getting to the end of July, nearly into August. So Ed, what you got coming up for us in the next few weeks and months?
Still to come in the ones that are already in the tank, there is the DCS Lena, which I've talked about previously as a preview, and the EPOS stand mount speaker. That's a much more interesting thing, and I will talk about that in the podcast when it goes live. In terms of things that are in my house and I'm doing, I've got a powered speaker from ELAC, which is absurdly good value, actually Q acoustically challenging good value. I've got more Bluesound in the form of the Power Node Edge. And do you remember the ultra limited edition NAD limited amplifier we looked at with the wooden cheeks and the VU meters? We've got the unlimited edition version of that. Okay. And now I ummed and ahed about whether we would go back and visit it, but I had a presentation from them and it is intriguingly different. And do you know what? My findings about it are intriguingly different as well. So that's to happen. Further away, hopefully, we get PMC's affordable Prodigy loudspeaker, and we've got some name coming up as well, because we haven't looked at that for a while.
Okay. Paul Munger saying, thanks, Ed. Barbie album looks like the 12-hour night shift is sorted.
I would agree. So happy to help, Paul, always.
Right. In terms of reviews coming up soon, Martin, what have you got lined up for us?
Well, I've just been taking a look at the Primaire, Swedish company, Primaire 35.8, which is an 8-channel, presumably home cinema power amplifier, Class D, and I've slotted that into my home cinema, and I will reveal all very soon. I've also got the Yamaha RX A4A 7-channel AV receiver, which I'll be giving the once-over very soon as well. Okay, excellent. And like I said earlier on, currently got 2 TCL TVs in, the C745, C845, the Panasonic turned up, so that's a 55-inch MZ980. I'm also looking at the 4Movie Theatre, Hisense PX1 Pro Ultra Short Throw projector. I've also got a BenQ W4000i projector to look at. A couple of soundbars, one from LG, one from Samsung, and I've also got a 4K UHD player for review.
Ooh, a rare beast.
A new one to the market. So it's been spinning all night here. It's very impressive. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when it comes up for review. Right, so I think we're all up to date. I think we've caught up with everything we need to catch up with, and just looking that there aren't any new questions tonight. But if you do have questions you want us to look at, answer, or if you've got general feedback for us, then do send them in. Best way of doing that is head over to avforums.com, go down to the bottom of the forum list and find AV Forums podcast forum. Go in there, find this episode and leave your questions, or you can send us an email, the old-fashioned way, podcast at avforums.com. There's no podcast next week because July is one of those months where there's an extra Monday. So the movies team will be back on Monday, the 7th of August at 8:30. Which is their normal time. And we'll be back with AV Forums podcast on the 14th of August, starting at our usual 7 p.m. time. But that's it for this week. So my thanks to Jules, who disappeared earlier. We've also had Martin, Ian, and Ed. Thank you very much, guys.
Cheers, Phil.
If you've enjoyed the podcast, then of course you can do all the social media cliched stuff like liking it and subscribing and all that kind of thing. And I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time. Good night.